Hello, welcome to CGTN. This is our special coverage on the China-Central Asia Summit. I'm Pandeng in Beijing. From the Silk Road to the Belt and Road Initiative, China has all along maintained exchanges with Central Asia. Chinese President Xi Jinping and the leaders from Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan are gathering in the northwestern Chinese city of Xi'an. This is their first in-person summit since China established diplomatic ties with those countries 31 years ago. Xi Jinping has delivered an important speech at the meeting. Over the years, China has continued to deepen cooperation with the 5 Central Asian countries. The summit draws new blueprint for future relations and cooperation. We will have pictures of key moments later in this coverage. So this is the second and final day, Friday, of the China-Central Asia Summit in Xi'an. Chinese President Xi Jinping held a roundtable meeting with the leaders of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. President Xi Jinping delivered a keynote speech to stress closer ties and deeper cooperation with those countries. The 5 visiting presidents have also made speeches. President Xi Jinping welcomed the visiting leaders at the venue before a group photo was taken to mark the event. Earlier, Xi Jinping held bilateral meetings with all leaders on the sidelines in which statements and documents on cooperation were signed. Chinese President Xi Jinping has called for building a new platform to facilitate cooperation with the Central Asian countries in various fields. It came in his keynote speech at the China-Central Asia Summit in northwestern China's Xi'an city.
Dear colleagues, this summit has built a new platform and opened up new prospects for China-Central Asia cooperation. And China is willing to take this summit as an opportunity to work closely with all parties to plan, build, and develop China-Central Asia cooperation well. First, we will strengthen the construction of mechanisms. We have established diplomatic, economic and trade, customs and other meeting mechanisms and industrialist committees. China also proposed to establish meeting and dialogue mechanisms in the fields of industry and investment, agriculture, transportation, emergency management, education and political parties, so as to build a broad platform for all-round and mutually beneficial cooperation among countries.
Now, for more insight, we're joined in the studio by Professor Liu Baocheng and Mr. Teng Jianqun. Gentlemen, as we just heard in talking about future cooperation and development, President Xi Jinping emphasized the importance of mechanism building. Mr. Teng, tell us a little bit more about the existing mechanisms between China and 5 Central Asian countries. And talking about forward-looking, would you say this latest proposal is a strong sign of deepened trust among all those countries?
Yeah, at least in recent 30 years, we have witnessed the development of such a mechanism between China and Central Asian countries, for example, in Shanghai Cooperation Organization and in bilateral relations between the 2 sides. I think this is a very good practice for the regional countries to enhance their cooperation in dealing with the security challenges and to enhance their development in economy and trade and some other aspects. So I think in recent 30 years we have witnessed the good development between China and Central Asia countries. In the future, I'm sure, as proposed by our president just now, I think we can go even further. For example, the mechanism construction, because such a mechanism should be a very important platform for all the countries in this region. I mean, for the 6 countries to think about, to talk about their policies or their blueprint for the future. So I think this time, I'm sure after this summit, the 6 countries will go even further in cooperation in various areas.
So having said that, could you be a little bit specific sector-wise? What kind of mechanism are you looking forward to? For example, security. We know it's kind of foundation for all kinds of development.
Yeah, in terms of security cooperation between China and the Central Asia countries, there are several examples I can give you. For example, the joint military drills carried out in recent years between China and some other Central Asian countries. That's really a good practice for the militaries in this area to think about how can they deal with the common challenges, not only the traditional challenges but also non-traditional challenges in this region, because security, of course, is a very important part for the development of the region and for some other countries. Actually, if we look at the world, we are approaching very crucial crossroad. Actually, this morning, 2 summits were kicked off, one in China, another in Japan. The purpose of these 2 summits are very different. For example, G7 summit, they would like to touch upon some other countries' domestic affairs, and in Xi'an, we would like to have a shared a future. So I think security cooperation and economic cooperation between China and the Central Asia countries will give a new driving forces for the peace, for the development, and for the cooperation in this region.
So, shared future. Yeah. Professor Liu, just as Mr. Teng just mentioned, the 6 countries have demonstrated their deepening political trust, and they're jointly building a better security in this region. How can that be conducive to future cooperation in various fields, for example, energy and connectivity?
Well, trust is really the basis for cooperation, and also particularly for continued cooperation. Trust are really carried by people. And we can really see that in terms of the security, in terms of the sectorial management, and also future generation and entrepreneurship. The training program is going on pretty well, and actually China has already, because of its own size and also its commitment, factored a lot more funds to support such sort of people-to-people exchange program and training center. As I said earlier, that actually this evening I'm going to offer training on the how China successfully is engaged in the energy transition towards a greener development. We can really share, and the other is the how we can really deal with the facilitation of all the movement of economic factors. And the connectivity by the railroad is one very important issue. The other is really the pipeline, both for oil and gas, that are there to build a connectivity. And third is really the standard connectivity, because right now we are not really there to fully harmonize all the standard. We can really play with a common norm, and that's something that we can really harness. And then the technology sharing, because you can see that no one is really budging about IP protection or all those sort of protective type of approach, but rather it's really a open arm approach, so that we can really utilize all the comparative advantage of each nation to build such a platform, and so that we can really have a shared advantage as compared with other regions that are under discombobulation.
Well, I'm very glad that you mentioned the Belt and Road Initiative. We know it's China proposed, but it's open to all the participating countries and regions in international organizations. What's your reading into the role of the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, in China, Central Asia cooperation? Is it an umbrella program to cover all the trade and economic connectivity projects, or it has a higher significance?
Well, within the Belt and Road, we propose the connectivity in terms of the finance, trade, investment, policy coordination, and more importantly, it's really the connectivity of the hearts of those people. So I think this is really the very holistic approach as how we can really engage in, versus a deal or transaction approach. And this can really build a solid foundation, and also is a future driven. And the other is that how we can really share. It's not really one way of demanding and either it is nor it is really a one-way contribution. So therefore, to have the shared responsibility, shared obligation, and shared fruition of the entire program is something that is very important, so that we can really play on equitable and fair basis. And with all the connectivities, with all the wonderful achievements, we do also face some of the realistic challenges. One would be the external shocks. And, since 2008, the global financial crisis really injected some of the instability in financial management with this region. And the other is the pandemic, and that can really be very destructive. And now the ongoing Ukraine crisis is also, giving a thrill in their spine as how they can really work together with more of the peacemaking forces like China to defend their peace and the foundation for development, as Professor Teng has mentioned. So, all these efforts are there to be intertwined, to work towards a future-oriented program that we are all committed.
Right, we can fairly say that connectivity is the main theme of the Belt and Road Initiative, Mr. Teng. Talking about Central Asia, help our global viewers understand strategically how important is better connectivity for all those 5 countries. And let's start with physical terms. I've got a name of some projects, for example, the Kamchik Railway Tunnel in Uzbekistan, and also the China-Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan highway. Why are we building these massive projects?
Yeah, this is a very good project for the sake to improve the infrastructures in these countries and also have a good connection among the countries in this region. And if you look at the map, you can find this is a really very important part. Geopolitically speaking, these countries, have been very important player in international games, and also gave a very good positive impact on peace, stability, and the development in Eurasia continent. If you look at the history, you can find such a reality. We can continue such a momentum by the improvement of the connectivity. That should be the core part of the Road and Belt Initiative for the sake of the regional countries and for the whole international community. So I think we can continue such a momentum to enhance the connectivity, not only for the transportation, but also for the exchanges of people to people, in culture and in some other aspect, because this is a very prosperous region for the world.
Right, what about trade, Professor? Actually, I've got some numbers here. For example, the trade volume between China and 5 Central Asian countries has been expanding rapidly. It hit a historical high of over $70 billion last year. That's an over 100-fold increase. We know trade, just as you mentioned, it's a holistic approach, but how important are those physical infrastructure projects we've just mentioned?
In terms of the composition of the trade portfolio, we can see that there is a high level of synergy where China is there to benefit from the continuous uninterrupted supply of the energy and also of the minerals from these countries, and also agricultural produce. And the other is that China is there to cater more to the variety in the daily necessities, from all the cooking utensils to garments, and also to those small machines, and more. We can really see that we are elevating over that, and you can see there's a whole lot more solar panels that are available over there. And China is also taking advantage of their cleaner water as compared with some other regions in China, and cleaner land to grow some of the Chinese herbal medicines over there, and that can really add value and also provide jobs to the local farmers. Then we are also there to offer more of the technology in, for example, steel making and the aluminum making, and then petrochemical products, so that they can really elevate their industrial structure. And of course, China is good at doing all the real estate development. We are building some towns, and the water dam projects together with the entire zoning program for the integrated real estate development program, that can really benefit quite a lot. It's cost effective, and also we can really deliver on time. And now, training of all the engineers and employees is something that is very effective in boosting efficiency in the entire operation, and also in giving more of their own human capacity, so that they get less dependent on China in the future. This is very much in the contrast with some other countries, that they really want to deepen your reliance on them on a successive basis, but this is not really the case for China.
Right, let me follow up on that. We've talked quite some big commodities. You just mentioned minerals and things like aluminum. But for common people and even common consumers, they're part of the big picture. It just came to my knowledge that some of the Central Asian countries, they produce one of the world's best cherries. So the problem is that
honey.
Exactly. So they just cannot ship them out, and the domestic markets, to be honest, is not large enough to consume all those large quantity of good agricultural produce. So we've had good physical infrastructure. So do you think that can also nurture logistics, for example, e-commerce services, and even cold storage, things like that, very precise technicalities?
It's not only there to shorten the time with good connectivity, and it is because the infrastructure is one thing, the other is how they can really clean the customs, and what type of quarantine and quality inspection they have to go through. So on the soft part, connectivity is also there to synchronize with the shortening of the road transportation or air transportation. And the other issue is that China is offering the right type of technology and training. Is how do they really do the right type of package to seal, and without much of the damage or exposure to pilferage along the transportation program, and then how they can really process for high quality. So I know that some of the Chinese business circle is pretty much catered to a particular product over there, so that they can really share all the information, and because many of those products are highly seasonal, and we are there to synchronize on their understanding. Where is the market is lacking something, where is the market is really getting saturated, etc. So this is the way that we are there to engage over the product exchange.
Yes, gentlemen, we are talking about this. The 6 leaders have signed important documents on cooperation, and they have also met the press. So just to follow up what we were talking about, Mr. Teng, we know the digital transformation is also an important part of the Belt and Road Initiative. Do you think that could also be a focus of China-Central Asia cooperation in the near future on the soft side to boost the benefits of the physical infrastructure?
Yeah, we are entering a society of informatization. This is really a new era for us to understand our challenges, our opportunities. If you look at the recent development in digital area, you can find a lot of fundamental changes, not only in the physical area but also in our mind. This is really a good opportunity. We should take such an opportunity to have a full use of such a technology and science, because this is the future of our society.
Indeed. Now, for more on that, let's cross live to my colleague Wang Guan in Xi'an. Hello, Wang Guan. You've been following this summit very closely. Bring us up to date.
Well, Pandong, this is China Central Asia engagement at its finest and also at its most productive. It has been a very busy morning. President Xi held this summit with his counterpart, leaders from 5 Central Asian countries. President Xi Jinping of China gave a major policy speech on his vision for China-Central Asia relations going forward. It was a very important policy speech. That was followed by the 5 Central Asian leaders, each stating their policy priorities, their hopes and dreams and visions for this relationship, for these relationships rather, going forward. And that is, of course, followed by a signing ceremony, a very important joint declaration, a major product of this summit. And of course, as you mentioned, there is a press availability whereby the leaders will state and restate their positions regarding this relationship. I must say I'm impressed by a number of things. President Xi once again stressed the fraternity and the enduring friendship of the relations between China and Central Asia, a theme he keeps coming back to, something that is very dear to his heart. Also, President Xi made this 8-point proposal on improving and advancing China-Central Asia relations going forward. And these are very important things. For example, he talked about the fact that there needs to be more mechanism building. There is currently a whole host of mechanisms regulating the two sides on trade, on investment. President Xi is saying that there should be more senior level dialogue mechanisms on investment, on agriculture. And also President Xi said there needs to be concrete measures on boosting trade growth going forward. And the product of that is an expedited customs clearance mechanism, a green channel for the agricultural produce produced in Central Asia, exported to China. This green channel will cover all the ports of entry between China and Central Asian countries. That is certainly very encouraging news. And of course, the President of China talked about connectivity, more connectivity rather. This CKU railway, China, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan railway is regaining momentum. If completed, it will be one of the shortest routes connecting China and Europe, going through Central Asia, of course. And out of these 8-point proposal, President Xi has just proposed on improving China-Central Asia relations. He talked about expanding energy cooperation. A brand new China-Central Asia energy partnership will be established. And on poverty reduction, a number of concrete numbers there. 26 billion RMB in financing and aid will be provided by China to these 5 Central Asian countries. That is the equivalent of $3.7 billion US dollars. And also on dialogue among civilizations, that is really the cultural and people-to-people component to this relationship, which is very, very important. President Xi proposes more government scholarships among these 6 countries, and also traditional Chinese medicine, TCM centers in Central Asian countries, new train routes, bringing more Chinese tourists to these countries. And of course, these points are echoed by the leaders of these countries. What is also sticking out to me is the fact that President Xi talked about these 2 things. He said that there needs to be more connectivity, something we've already touched upon. And he said that there needs to be a stable Central Asia. I feel very strongly about this because if you look at it, Central Asia, ever since their independence in 1991 from the former Soviet Union, it is resisting itself from becoming a battleground for proxy wars. It is resisting hegemony. It is rejecting chauvinism, and it is rejecting containment. So President Xi made it very clear that China sees eye to eye with 5 Central Asian countries in their pursuit of national independence, in their countering of outside interference. And he said that Central Asia should be no place for proxy wars. It should be no place for color revolutions. and it should be no place for outside interference.
Thank you very much, my colleague Wang Guan in Xi'an. After the roundtable meeting of the China Central Asia Summit, Chinese President Xi Jinping and the leaders of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan have attended a signing ceremony and met the press.
The signing ceremony of the
This is
China
the
Central
footage.
Asia Summit now begins. May I first invite the leaders of China and the 5 Central Asian countries to sign the Xi'an Declaration of the China Central Asia Summit.
A signing ceremony at the China Central Asia Summit. Chinese President Xi Jinping and 5 leaders from Central Asia signing important documents on cooperation.
Now may I invite His Excellency President Xi Jinping to deliver remarks.
Your Excellencies, my distinguished colleagues, friends from the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I have just held a successful China Central Asia Summit with the presidents of the 5 Central Asian countries. We reviewed the history of friendly exchanges between China and Central Asia, took stock of our cooperation outcomes, summed up successful experience, and built new consensus. We jointly signed the Xi'an Declaration of the China Central Asia Summit, adopted a list of summit outcomes, and charted a blueprint for the future development of China Central Asia relations. Facing profound changes unseen in a century, and bearing in mind the fundamental interests of and a better future for the people of all countries, we are determined to work together to rise up to challenges, foster a closer China Central Asia community with a shared future, and contribute to building a community with a shared future for mankind. We will firmly support each other on issues concerning our respective core interests, such as sovereignty, independence, security, and territorial integrity. Respect the development path chosen based on each other's national conditions, and firmly oppose interference in internal affairs by any force or under any pretext. Central Asian countries fully recognize the significance of the Chinese path to modernization for the world's development and reaffirmed their commitment to the One China principle. We will take the 10th anniversary of Belt and Road cooperation as a new starting point. Efforts will be made to build better synergy among development strategies, promote trade liberalization and facilitation, expand industrial and investment cooperation, further develop transport corridors connecting China and Central Asia, support the establishment of a China-Central Asia Energy Development Partnership, encourage cooperation on high technologies, and ensure food security in the region. Together, we will foster a new cooperation paradigm featuring high-level complementarity and mutual benefit. We will deepen people-to-people exchanges across the board by actively cooperating on sports, archaeology, tourism, medical and healthcare, and other areas. We will ensure the success of the Year of Culture and Arts for the peoples of China and the Central Asian countries, or China Central Asia Youth Arts Festival. Establish cultural centers in each other's countries, expand mutual visits, encourage youth exchanges, and jointly implement the Cultural Silk Road program. China will continue to provide government scholarships to young students of Central Asian countries, set up more Luban workshops, and traditional medicine centers in Central Asia, and help them develop high-caliber talent. We will resolutely combat all forms of terrorism, separatism, and extremism, as well as drug trafficking and transnational organized crimes. We will step up cooperation on biosecurity, cybersecurity, and disaster relief, and continue to help the Afghan people maintain security and stability and realize peace and reconstruction. We will work together to build a Central Asia that features no conflict and enduring peace. We will abide by the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, firmly uphold multilateralism, the universally recognized international law and norms of international relations, safeguard international equity and justice, and make the international order and global governance system more just and equitable. All sides have expressed support for and readiness to operationalize the Global Development Initiative, the Global Security Initiative, and the Global Civilization Initiative, recognizing their significance for world peace and development, and for progress of human civilization. Taking the opportunity of this summit, we have officially inaugurated the China Central Asia Summit mechanism, with China and the Central Asian countries taking turns to host the biannual summit. The next summit will be held in Kazakhstan in 2025. We will work to flesh out the mechanism and look into the feasibility of establishing a permanent secretariat in China. We will make transport, commerce, investment and industry, agriculture, energy, customs, and people-to-people exchanges our priority areas, and take solid and efficient steps to promote all-dimensional and deep-going cooperation among the 6 countries. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, this summit has been a good start for our cooperation. I believe with our joint efforts, China's relations with Central Asian countries will forge ahead like a ship, braving all winds and waves, add new momentum to the development and revitalization of the 6 countries, and inject strong, positive energy to peace and stability of the region. Thank you.
The signing ceremony of the China Central Asia Summit and the joint press conference now concludes.
There was the signing ceremony of the Xi'an Declaration of the China Central Asia Summit and a joint press conference following the signing ceremony. Now, for more insight, let's talk to our studio guests. So, Mr. Teng, the 6 leaders have just signed the Xi'an Declaration, and at the joint press conference, Chinese President Xi Jinping mentioned some key principles in this guiding document, if you will, for the cooperation among China and Central Asia in the future. What would you say is the key principle? Are the key principles for this declaration?
I think number one is the new consensus have been reached at this moment, and also a new blueprint has been made there, and there should be new, level cooperation among the countries in this region. If you look at the development, we, first had a good, neighborhood, and then strategic partner, and now the comprehensive strategic partnership. This is development of our relations among all the countries in this region. So I'm sure after this summit we will have a more strong momentum for the cooperation in economy, in trade, also in security.
Right. It looks like some of the principles are also enshrined in President Xi Jinping's keynote speech at the summit. For example, as you just mentioned, common development, common security, and a long-lasting friendship going on for generations to come. Talking about security still, on that, we noticed that in President Xi Jinping's address to the joint press conference, he mentioned that leaders have also focused on Afghanistan. What are the China Central Asia approach to help Afghanistan deal with the current crisis, both humanitarian and political?
I'm sure the 6 countries will give more and more support to the peaceful establishment of Afghanistan, because the logic is very simple. Only all the countries in this region share the peace and stability. I'm sure the other countries can get such a good condition or environment for the domestic development. If we look at the history or look at the current situation, you can find the development, especially in Afghanistan after the withdrawal of U.S. troops and some other, countries' troops. I'm sure the country, Afghanistan, actually has been on a good development for its society restoration, and also for its economy restoration. Of course, the country is facing some new challenges. For example, how can that country have a good relation with some other countries, especially Central Asia countries. So this is a new stage for the 6 countries, China and 5 Central Asia countries, to cooperate with Afghanistan to maintain such a peaceful and stable development. This is actually a good support for that country to have a normal society and have a normal relations with other countries.
Regarding some non-traditional security challenges, earlier we talked about the leaders have also vowed to strengthen cooperation on that. What could be the main challenges for the 6 countries, and what are the existing and forward-looking mechanisms?
I'm sure the 6 countries will continue their efforts to maintain peace and stability in this region, especially to continue the fighting against the 3 war forces. And this time, our president also mentioned the drug trafficking and the international crime activities in this region. To
cybersecurity.
Yeah. So this is actually a new proposal from China, from the other 5 countries, to enlarge the cooperation in security and to maintain a more stable and peaceful, environment for the domestic development in this region.
What about people-to-people exchanges, Professor Liu? You've been a long-time practitioner in this particular regard. Would you say Xi'an Declaration signed by China and 5 Central Asian countries is another big boost, a morale boost for you?
Definitely, because President Xi mentioned about beefing up the scholarship, and further propel the training program, not only for international students from this region, but also for the senior officials in different sectors. Like what I'm doing now is the environment, and the other could be, on the scientific park management and lab management, the industrial manufacture management, etc. So this is something that's very tangible. The other would be, the sports exchanges, because we do have a lot of distinctive advantages to share on the sports. And now, actually, Confucius Institute is one of the carrier for the Chinese culture, together with its own language. Now we are facing quite a headwind in some other countries, from the Nordic countries to West Europe, and not to mention the United States. But the Confucius Institute is still very popular in those Central Asian countries. And therefore, for the students who have already trained in our country with a master's degree or even with a PhD degree, they go back and teach the Chinese normal language and also the business language. So this is something that's important. And President Xi also mentioned about the Luban type of workshop. And
Right.
this is really there to give very practical technology and give very practical skills to people over there, so that they can really have a hands-on type of operation, even with 1 week training or 3 months training, and together with the more of the enlarged foreign investment from China, and leveraging the also global investment, so that they immediately have jobs and have decent jobs. So this is something that's very practical and tangible. So after all, it is really the benefit people can really receive. And that really matters, not really high-level people signing all documents, with wining and dining banquets. That really matters.
It's not only about the big picture, but also about details and also benefits to the common people. Well, Mr. Teng, we've talked quite much about mechanism building. Now we've got the answer. That is the China Central Asia Heads of State meeting mechanism.
Yeah.
It's been officially announced in Xi'an Declaration. Leaders will be meeting for every 2 years, and next summit is going to happen in 2025 in Kazakhstan. And more important, this mechanism has a permanent secretariat.
Yeah.
Tell us more about the significance of this mechanism building.
I think it's very important for any mechanism construction in this region. The summit will be held in twice a year, and also
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is a very pragmatical practice for the countries in this region to have a very important platform for all the leaders to think about the future, to think about the cooperation. And also at the working level, they can have a routine arrangement for the cooperation and for the development of the relations among these countries. And also, I think such a mechanism construction will give a very good platform to find any solution if there is a dispute among the countries in this region.
Thank you very much, Mr. Teng Jianqun and Professor Liu Baocheng there. You're watching CGTN. Chinese President Xi Jinping and 5 Central Asian leaders have signed the Xi'an Declaration of the China Central Asia Summit. Stay with us.